Evening, fellow YouTubers, and welcome to Mr. V's Impression Theatre. Today I bring you Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle, read by Frank Sinatra. Mr. Seahorse and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, and Mrs. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. "It is time for me to lay my eggs," she said, and Mr. Seahorse asked if he could help. "Why, yes, thank you," Mrs. Seahorse said, and she laid her eggs in a pouch on Mr. Seahorse's belly. And he promised to Mrs. Seahorse that he would take good care of those little eggs. That he drifted gently through the sea. He passed right by many things. A group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. But before long, he met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" said Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built my nest, and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs on it. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam away. Before long, he passed by a lionfish hidden in the coral. Soon after, he met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Tilapia?" asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer because his mouth was full of eggs. I know," said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs, and now you're taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "Well, you must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. Shortly afterwards, he swam past a pair of leaf fish hiding among the seaweed. And before long, he met Mr. Curtis. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. "Mrs. Curtis laid her eggs, and I stuck them on my head. Now I'm taking care of them until they hatch. And you're doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. Then he swam past a stonefish hiding behind a rock, and met at Mr. Pipe. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly, and I'm taking care of them until they hatch." "You should be proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. Shortly after, he met Mr. Bullhead. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. Mrs. Bullhead had laid her eggs, and they hatched. Now I'm babysitting. "And you're doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and he swam on his way. Then the time came for the Seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that. At last the babies tumbled out of Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One seahorse turned and tried to come back into the pouch. "Oh, no," said Mr. Seahorse. "I do love you, but now you're ready to be on your own. You see, I took mighty fine care of you, and now it's time for you to be on your way and make your place in the world." And that concludes this episode of Mr. V's Impression Theatre. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Good night, and may the good Lord take a liking to you.